All right. Trying something a little different this time, so bear with me once again. I know y'all are used to that though at this point. Let's see. Go live. Okay, perfect. Okay, I think that's working. Now, can get this part to do what it's supposed to do. We will be cooking with gasoline. Butter. All right, no. I don't know if that'll work or not. Let's see. Let me check myself. All right. Okay. Yeah, sort of. I think I need to change the window here. Hold on. Do, do, do. There we go. Okay, okay, okay. Now, I think we've got it. Hold on. Did that do it? Maybe. Okay. There we go. All right. That's what I was looking for. Fantastic. So, greetings. Good evening. Welcome to Frequently Answered Questions. If you've never been here before, but basically, I just answer a few questions that I either have recently been asked by clients, have just been asked by clients again frequently, and therefore had to answer frequently. Say had to, got the privilege, right, to answer frequently. And so it's just a way to kind of get information and perspectives out there. Of course, I'm just one person, so it's not like, you know, I know everything there is to know in the world, but a lot of times just offering my perspective and my experience can help somebody, sidestep a problem basically and gain new knowledge to help them make more educated decisions on behalf of themselves. So, new format, as you can see. So first of all, this is less stressful for me because I'm not on camera. Also, I've been looking and thinking about ways to help um, kind of seamlessly and, like I said, just with as low effort as possible, if you will, on my part, um, help promote some of my fellow authors, especially ones that I see are indie or, like I said, just starting out. So maybe they just got a book deal. This is their first book, something like that. And so I thought, okay, this is a way to do it, right? I'm going to answer the questions and then I can put them up. That way, if you were to come in, like while I was in the middle of, answering one, you would know what the question was, right? So like having that up is helpful. But then while you're listening, you can go ahead and check out these folks that I'm presenting here um, during the recording, and then that way you can hopefully go and support them by either purchasing and reading their books, leaving reviews, sharing them with other people that you think might be interested. I think a lot of people miss that opportunity. They say, "Oh, well, I'm not a whatever, like a romance reader or what have you." And it's like, I mean, sure, but you probably know romance readers, right? So, I mean, how easy is it to, hey, I just heard about this author, Kay McCoy. She's got this Cupid's Kiss anthology. You might want to check it out. Boom. Like, that's it. Um, Supporting people's businesses is Like, don't overcomplicate it. It doesn't always have to be about you. If something's like just not up your alley, that's totally fine. But you can still find ways to support people again if you want to, um, by leveraging your network of folks, your friends, your family, your coworkers, your students, your writing group members, whoever, right, that you think might be interested in whatever it is that they have to offer. Don't be afraid to, kind of spread the love. So that's my 2 cents on that. That was not a question to answer tonight, but I'm just saying, hey, this is kind of one way that I think I might be able to contribute to helping out authors who, you know, like I said, I think all of us will take however much help we can get as far as promotion and getting our names out there and letting people know about us. So there's that. I'm done. Okay. So the first question for tonight is, can you log into my KDP account and insert task here? And I understand you may be like, well, that's very specific, Tanisha. Like, what is going on? To explain, I have twice in the past 30 days for 2 different past clients. I know. I've been asked to log into their, again, not mine, right? Their KDP account and do something, right? And mind you, these are people that I helped create their account multiple years ago. I mean, it's not like it was last week or anything like that. And again, due to liability issues and stuff, it's not like I'm going in, right? I am walking you through the process, basically, right? So the worst case scenario is you accidentally like say what your password is while you're typing it in or something like that, right? And maybe I hear it. That's about the worst it would go. But if you know me, yeah, like my brain is a sieve. So I'm not remembering that. There's no way. I'm not remembering that within the next hour, let alone years later, right? So I had 2 different past clients from, again, multiple years ago ask this exact same question just with different tasks. And I'm like, okay, so that's interesting that you think that I would have that information. Again, this is your account. It's not mine. This would really be the equivalent of asking me to go into your bank account and close one of your savings account or something like with your online banking. I don't have your information. Like, it's not my account. So the only thing I can figure is 2 things that went awry here, apparently. When I told them, to create the KDP account and, your username, password, all that, and, told them to, save this information. You're going to need it if you want to log on again, yada, yada, yada. They did not heed that, which, okay, you're grown. You can do what you want to do. So they've lost their login information. Fair enough. But that also means that they can't, I don't know. Maybe they did a couple of times after, they first got it set up. But I'm thinking to myself, well, have you been logging in and checking your information? Because you can't have been, right? if you don't know your login information, like, I don't know how that works. So the answer to this question is no, right? If I haven't made that clear. But I just also want to give you a couple of tips related to, making sure that you don't end up in the situation that these folks are in, where you're having to try to ask. I mean, just talk about grasping at straws. You're having to ask people that you haven't talked to in years to try to help you figure out what your username and password are. So, of course, first option, forgot password, right? If you go to KDP and you try to sign in, just like with literally any other online account, they're going to have the option to select forgot password. And you can go through that process and reset your password, and then you're good to go. However, if you forget your password again, you're just going to end up back in the same place. So my next tip would be to, and this is more general, but it would apply here, especially in a situation like this. My next piece of advice would be to make your passwords. I use a password formula, basically. And that is how I'm able to keep up with literally dozens of passwords without having to write them down, which of course makes you vulnerable to somebody just, seeing it and all of that. Or literally having to try to store it in my head, because again, I will not. Like, my brain just doesn't, I won't remember all these different passwords that are all so vastly variable, right? So basically what I do is, now again, I'm not giving you my formula, but I'm giving you an example of what a formula might look like. So it might look like the year you were born, your dog's name with the last letter capitalized, and the first three letters of the website name, and then, I don't know, a $, right? Because, a lot of passwords, a lot of sites, they want you to have some kind of symbol. So for me, if I was following that formula, and let's say it was a Facebook account, so it will be 1986, right? My birth year. My dog's name, I guess I'd have to pick one. Okay, Ruby, since she's in the room. So Ruby, and it'd be lowercase RUB, capital Y. And then the first three letters of the website for Facebook would be FAC, and then the $. So that's my password for Facebook, right? So let's say Instagram. Okay, 1986, RUB, capital Y, INS, $. If I bank with Bank of America, 1986, RUB, capital Y, BAN, $. Do you see how? And so all that's changing all that's changing is the part about the website based on whichever website you're trying to log on to. But you can probably remember, if you create a simple enough, formula, you can remember the other three parts of the formula. You can remember what numbers you chose. You can remember what other name or word that you chose, which letter is capitalized, and whatever symbol that you chose. And so, for example, you could write this down somewhere and it would still be pretty difficult for somebody to figure out what it was at all. Like, first of all, they won't necessarily know that that's your password, right? And then they're not, even if they knew that this was how you put your passwords together, they might not understand. Sorry, my phone. If they might not understand what exactly is going on, like what this means, because you might write something like birth, pup, site, first three, and then $. You can go ahead and just put the $, right? So if they see birth, pup, site, first three $, they might have what that means, but they have no clue what that means necessarily. So it makes it a lot harder for either somebody ran across your formula for them to actually understand what that means. Now, if you make it easy and you literally write every password for every site that I'm part of is going to have a formula like this. First, write the full, 4-digit year that I was born. Then write Ruby's name with the Y capital. Like, if you do that, then of course. But if you just make it kind of short and snappy and just use prompts in case, like I say, for some reason you did forget your formula, it should be pretty difficult for somebody to guess. Now, again, nothing in life is foolproof. I guess anything's technically possible, but just trying to make sure you understand that can really, that can really help as far as you remembering what your passwords are. Because again, once you have the formula, you're pretty much good to go. And no matter what website you visit, you'll be able to remember what the password is. It's easy. Now, I know, so for example, like MailerLite, there's an option there where you can select if you want them to prompt you to change update your password every 6 months or something like that. So if you do something like that, or for example, it's like for work, your work email, they may ask you to do something like that. Or, if you have certain accounts you have to log into for your job. So there's certain situations where you're going to need to come up with a way to handle that. But usually it's pretty easy, especially if it's only every 6 months. It's usually not that difficult. But for those accounts, if I know that that's part of it, what I will generally do is put something related to the year on there instead of, my house number or my phone number, or like I said, my birth year, like whatever numbers that you use for it. instead of that, for those types, which again, most people only have a couple, if any, where you know you're going to have to change it multiple times a year, I generally would just use the year. So it'd be like, so instead of 1986, for example, it would be 2025 1. And then the next time they ask me to update it, it'll be 2025 2. And the next time 2025 3 until we switch over to 2026. And then it's 2026 1, and you just start over. And then that's a really easy way to, stay within their protocols and constantly be updating your password every time they want you to. But again, it's simple enough that you can still remember the formula and not be scrambling every time you got to put your password in, right? Or trying to figure out what the last password was, because I run into that too, where people forget what their last password was, but maybe they remember 2 passwords ago, so they try to put that in and it says, oh, you already used this, blah blah blah. So now that you know the formula, you know what your past ones were, so you wouldn't repeat and all of that. So that's my guidance. Okay. Just keep up with your passwords in general. Number 1. Number 2, if you find yourself in a situation where for some reason someone else has your password, so maybe you did put yourself in a situation where somebody else was actually in your account doing X, Y, and Z, immediately, like once you are done with, them helping you do whatever, even if it's just setting up the site, setting up the password for get the email, the website, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever kind of account, immediately change it, right? Because that's just a liability thing. So immediately go change it after they've helped you with whatever they're helping you with. And then that just helps keep you as secure as possible. Again, we all know about data breaches and whatnot, but do what you can on your end, right? At least don't make it easy is kind of where I'm at with that. So, because of course stuff is just going to happen. That's just life. But there are plenty of things we can do to make ourselves just less vulnerable to being, to having our information compromised, right? So keep all that in mind. I think that's pretty much it on passwords and stuff. Just that's one way to it's a compromise. It's making it easier for you to remember, but it's still secure enough that, you don't have to worry about any old body being able to guess. And God, if anybody listening to this, has a password that is like password 1 or 123 ABC, please God, change that immediately. Literally stop listening to me. Go to that account right now and go change it to anything else on the God's green earth. But, again, this is a great opportunity to go ahead and, set you up a formula. And so that way you can have secure passwords. Please, if you don't hate my guts, just as a personal favor to me, please go do that. Thank you very much. So next, what's the right way to do whatever, right? What's the right way to hire a proofreader? What's the right way to print a book? Just whatever. Now, this is, again, a more, general question, and it's just interesting. So my experience, like I said, that's all I can give you. My experience has been that there isn't one. And I just see so many, especially, like I said, new authors get so caught up trying to figure out what the quote unquote right way is to do something. And I try to remind people well, if there were just one right way to do it, then that's just what everybody would do, right? So it's just, that whole idea just doesn't really make a lot of sense. You see all these different kinds of books presented and produced in all these different kinds of ways because we have options, right? It's different strokes for different folks. So I think not viewing this process as black and white, right or wrong, good or bad, right? I posted maybe a couple of weeks or so, maybe last month, Lord, I'm losing track of time, about, people who use words like legitimate when they're talking about writing or any other kind of art, where it's like, okay, what does that mean? And again, it's going to mean different things to different people. And so, if they have a solid definition at all, right? I think a lot of times people they kind of glorify a certain path or a certain type of book, and it's like, if you're not this type of book, so for example, if you're not an award-winning author of a literary piece, right, then you don't matter, your book sucks, right? Just automatically, like, they've never read your stuff, they don't know anything about you, but it's just automatically terrible because it doesn't fit into that extremely narrow, right, field. And let them have it, they're grown, that's fine. My perspective and my experience has been, again, different strokes for different folks. Different people like different things, and different methods work better for different people. There are some people who are trying to get their literary career off the ground, and they barely have enough money to live, to pay rent and feed themselves, right? Is like 99% of their income every month. It's just that. It's just survival. So they don't have developmental editor money, or at least not seasoned professional developmental editor money. They might have, like, one of those people that'll tell you that they'll do your developmental editing for, like, I don't know, $50 or something like that. And it's like a 200,000 word, right? Like, novel. They might be able to pull off something like that. Now, the quality and all, that's a different question, but that's about the best they could possibly do, right? Literally, just because financial constraints are a real thing, y'all. Like, I cannot tell you how many people I've seen be like, oh, well, you should just save up. Baby, with what? There's nothing left, or there's a few dollars left at the end of the month, or after, I pay all my bills after, I get my paycheck. So when I have a book that's that large, right, or I have a series of books, because maybe I do work at like I used to be a tech at a halfway house, right? A lot of downtime, especially working third shift, right? So everybody's asleep. There's just not. So I got a whole lot of studying done, a whole lot of reading done, a whole lot of writing done. So maybe I had the time to produce this nice, long, juicy book, but okay, like, where's the money coming from to actually take it through those professional grooming steps to prepare it for publication? And so there are people out there who do the best they can with their own eye and efforts, and with volunteers. So people from their critique groups, or just people they know from online forums and things like that, who are generous and kind enough to try to help. I don't see anything wrong with that. Like, again, maybe I'm just off my rocker, but I don't see anything wrong with that, because you're doing the best you can with what you have, which, mind you, is all anybody is doing. The only difference is some people have a whole lot more, exponentially more resources than other people. That's it. So me personally, I don't think anybody should, like, go bankrupt, right? Or take out a second mortgage, or take out a loan, or anything like that, just to publish a book, especially when there are so many people out here who are not doing that. It doesn't make financial sense about 99% of the time. It just, when you sit down and run the numbers, it's just like, nah, that doesn't, that's probably not the best way to go, right? So there is no one right way to write a book, develop a book, publish a book. There's just the way that's right for you. And again, my experience has been, it's going to take some time and some trial and error to kind of figure that out. Again, totally fine. That's perfectly normal. That's super duper common. So my guidance is just to embrace that. Just understand that that's kind of how this is going to go, and just buckle in, and just like, all right, well, we're just going to go for a ride. We're going to do this, and do the best you can with what you have. My biggest concern when it comes to stuff like this is people who don't know about the various book development steps that are available, right? They don't know that developmental editing exists. They don't know that manuscript evaluations are a thing. They don't know that copy editing exists, so on and so forth. And I do my best to try to educate people, say, well, yeah, here's the general process that you might go through. And I think doing as many of these as you can afford to do professionally is always going to be a bonus. But the ones that you can't afford to, hire somebody for, at least try to see if you can get some volunteers to help with it as best they can, right? And that's still going to be better than doing nothing, right? That's all as long as you know the steps and try to get them done to some capacity, you should be pretty solid. Again, because there's no such thing as perfect. Every book has errors. Like, that's not the point, right? But the point is to make it as strong as you can, again, based on the resources that you have available to you. So I don't knock anybody for doing their best. And again, maybe, your book has more mistakes or whatever in it than the next person's book. But again, that's always going to be the case. There's always going to be somebody's book that's a little bit cleaner or whatever the case may be. And I mean, okay, that's fine, right? That's like saying somebody's taller than you or has more money than you. All right, that doesn't mean you're a bad person, right? Or you don't deserve to live because you don't have the genetic resources or the financial resources that the next person does. It just means you're in a different spot than they are. Fair enough. And you're doing the best you can with what you have. So there is no right way. There is no one right way. There's just the way that's right for you. There's no such thing as perfect. Everybody on the planet who is writing and publishing books is literally just doing the best they can with whatever resources they have available to them. The biggest difference being that everybody has different resources and different amounts of said resources. So that's it. Don't stress yourself out trying to look for one right way, because there isn't one, right? It's just about what's going to work for you based on where you're at and where you're trying to go, like what you're trying to accomplish. So, last but not least, what's the difference between indie and traditional publishing? I actually hadn't gotten this question in a while, but I got it a couple of days ago this past weekend while I was talking to a prospective client, and they were asking some questions because this was their first book, so they're new to the scene, and like I said, most of the people I work with are brand new, and this is one of the questions I ask, when I'm trying to figure out what the person's goals are, what they're trying to accomplish. And I said, well, it's really going to help me to know, kind of where you're headed as far as, are you going to go traditional? Are you trying to go indie? And they were like, I don't even know what's the difference. I'm like, all right, cool. So there are a lot of little nuanced things, of course, but in general, I say if we put it in a nutshell, to the best of my ability, generally speaking, it's going to be, I'm sorry, Lord have mercy, my phone. So it's generally a situation where with indie publishing, you are in control and you're managing this entire process. So you decide how much editing and development the book is going to go through. You decide who you're going to hire for each of those steps. You decide, what the cover is going to look like and what the trim size of the book is going to be and how everything is going to be promoted and advertised and all that, right? You are in the driver's seat for this entire thing. With traditional publishing, well, and I guess I can add that because you're in the driver's seat, you also get to decide things like when you actually publish, right? Where, how, which formats that you're going to do, like all that type of stuff, that's all completely up to you. So some people who are indie authors publish a book every few months. A lot of the ones that you'll see where they have a pretty big career, big audience, their full-time job is writing and publishing books. They are often publishing several times a year, right? And I've tried to explain that to people because again, nothing's impossible, but I can't remember the last time that I saw where somebody was an indie author, they published one book a year and they made a decent income, right? Like enough to feed themselves, right? To survive and pay all their bills. Generally speaking, if that's something that you want to do, building your audience, of course, is key, but also feeding the beast, right? Publishing on a consistent and regular basis is kind of, like I said, how you make enough to be able to sustain yourself financially. So if your plan or your ability, like I said, if you just, for whatever reason, you can only crank out one book a year, that's fine. Just know that it's going to be a lot more difficult for you to kind of transition over to being a full-time author if that's as fast as you can go, right? So there's just going to be some different challenges there. But that's it. That's indie publishing. It's just you're in control of everything. You're making all of these decisions. When you try to go traditional, basically what you're doing is you write it, but then you're trying to find somebody else to be in control of all those other aspects. You're basically trying to convince a company to take over the decision making, the financial responsibilities, the logistics, like all of that, right? And of course, again, that costs money, that takes time and energy. So that's why it's generally a longer process that's harder to get through, because again, there is that whole tap dance to try to, find a publisher that's going to want to do this for your manuscript. Now, there's also the extra element of getting a literary agent, which, again, just like I said, everybody's journey is going to be different, of course. But if I kind of condense the experience that I've had with traditionally published authors, I'd say if you were moving really quickly, you would spend 6 months to a year looking for an agent. And if you find one, you would spend 6 months to a year working on grooming the manuscript between the two of you. And then you would spend 6 months to a year with them trying to sell it to, the publishers they have relationships with. And then it would be another, like once you sign on the dotted line, you're looking at another 1 to 2 years before the book is actually on the market. So the idea of waiting, 3 to 5 years, right, from the moment you actually finish the manuscript before it's on the shelf is not at all unreasonable. But that's just not something that normally happens with indie publishing, right? Because there's not all these extra hoops to jump through and all these other people to, involve. Other than, like I said, the people that you hire to perform certain services for you. But so that's a pretty big difference that I think a lot of people aren't quite prepared for. I personally know of multiple people in my author circle who, I moved to Atlanta in 2014. Yeah, I moved to Atlanta in 2014, so more than 10 years ago. And there are people I know who still, since I got here, before I got here and met them, they had been looking for an agent and trying to get a book deal. They are still looking for an agent and or trying to get a book deal. And again, it's been a solid, because I moved here in September of 2014. So it's been a solid full 10 years with nothing, right? They're not on their way to be published. They haven't gotten the book deal. They had just nothing, no forward movement whatsoever. Maybe some of them have gotten agents and maybe fired them depending on the situation, but none of them, there's literally a handful of them that none of them have published their book yet. Whereas the indie authors I know at this point in that same amount of time have published dozens of books, you know what I mean? So it's just, and again, have started making money. Some of them have quit their day jobs at this point. So it's just, depending on what your goals are, I would just say be mindful, of thinking about which option you want to choose. I seem to see that it's a little bit easier to get a book deal with people who are with companies that are like the smaller imprints of the big five, as opposed to trying to, do the larger ones. So that can help a little bit. It seems like if you can find these kind of niche imprints that they have. But what some people will do, I've noticed, is find boutique publishers. So super, super micro, small. And sometimes that's fine, I guess. But I guess what I found odd is that a lot of these people seem to be doing all of the pieces, pretty much that they would be doing as indie authors. So it brings into question okay, well, what exactly is the role, of the quote unquote publisher? Because I feel like some of these people may have run into scams, but what is the role of the publisher if, I am doing all of this stuff that I would be doing on my own anyway? Because you got to remember with, in those traditional publishing deals, the publisher is usually taking the lion's share, right, of the royalties. So if you don't know, the profits from your book, right, the money that your book makes. So the publisher is taking the lion's share of that. And so to me, that, that's fine if you're also doing the lion's share of the work, you did the lion's share of investing, okay, I'm totally fine with that. But when it's like, okay, well, I'm the one that's put, I wrote it first, right? That's fine. And then, you're telling me that I got to go out and find, people to do arcs. Apparently that's laying on my shoulders, right? And I have to go and do all this advertising and promotion, so that's on me too. Okay, you're asking me if which, like I said, some of this stuff just boggles my mind. You're asking me to go and find an editor, right, for the book, or it's like, okay, but isn't all this stuff what you're supposed to be doing? I mean, what? Because again, if I have to do it anyway, what is the point? I could just do it, and then I could keep all my money. Like, so I don't understand it. But whatever, to each their own. So those are the major differences. On one hand, with indie publishing, you're in control. So, but again, like I said, that does mean you're investing any kind of money, time, energy, all of that is on you. If you want to hire people for certain things, you got to come up with the money to do that. If you don't want to, there is a chance that your, quality of your finished product could suffer. And so you just kind of have to gauge how important certain things are and what you have the money to pay for versus what kind of talents you have. And kind of figure that out to make it balance out so that you are better able to publish and be in the black and be profitable, as opposed to publishing in like deeply in the red to the point where it's like it's going to be years before you get, before you make a profit. So I think that's kind of an important balance. Again, if you want to be a career author, now don't forget, there are people out there who really, this is more of a hobby. So they're not super concerned about that. Like, this is something they want to invest in just kind of for the fun of it. And so they're not really worried about that. So I'm only talking to the people who are trying to make a career out of, publishing. It's like, all right, well, be really careful about your ROI, right? So whereas with traditional publishing, again, the publisher would take care of all of that in theory, right? And you would end up getting an advance against royalties, again, hopefully. But the thing about that is, you have to earn that out before you get any more checks from them. So if you get a book deal and they say, okay, here's $1,000 or something, if your book doesn't sell enough to where with your, whatever it's going to be, 2%, 5%, 6% that you're going to get for every book sold, and then of course you have to split a portion of that with your agent. So whatever you actually would normally get, you already got that. That's why it's called advance, right? So the book has to keep selling and selling and selling until it hits that threshold. And once you make $1,000.01, then you'll start getting checks from the publisher, and that can never happen. That is an option, right? And or that can take an extremely long time, right? So it could be a situation where that $1,000 check that you got when you sign on the dotted line is the only penny you will ever see from that publisher, right? So all these little nuances and things that are just things to keep in mind when you're kind of figuring out which route you want to go. If you're trying to move relatively quickly, especially if you've got like a backlog of ideas or actual manuscripts that you've written and you want to get them out as quickly as possible, traditional is probably not the way to go. If you don't mind waiting, if you're okay with somebody else being in control of whether or not you publish, again, you don't mind giving up the lion's share of the control and the royalties and stuff like that, you really do just want to kind of hand it off, then traditional publishing is probably a better way to go if you're patient and like I said, don't mind all the rejection and stuff like that can come with it. So those are the major differences. So that's it for tonight. So I will see y'all in a couple of weeks around 6 o'clock. I'm going to do 6 o'clock though next time. I'm going to be like on time. It's going to be amazing. But all right, so y'all just have a good rest of the week and weekend. Oh, I guess I should say, don't forget about the first 1,000 words contest. It closes February 28th. So if you know anybody who has a published book on the market for sale, they can enter that contest, and it's at winitrite.com, WINITWRITE.com. And The Atlanta Self-Publishing Conference is taking place on March 22nd. So that is a fantastic opportunity to learn about publishing your own work and being your own boss in that sort of realm. I will be there, of course. I've been helping with the conference for the past few years, and so if you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out. I will try to answer them as I can. But it's just, like I said, a great opportunity to learn about what that's really like, and we're going to have different sessions that cover the publishing part, editing, writing, all that jazz. I personally have been doing the new author boot camp since October, and those are monthly sessions where I walk you through each step in the process. So this month we did, what did we do? Just editing, right? And then next month in February, we're going to do publishing. So that session is going to be like, all right, we've written the book, we've gotten it all groomed and ready to go pretty much. But I'll talk about illustrations, cover design, book design, proofreading, all that jazz, uploading the book to Amazon, yada, 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 just so everybody has an idea of what that looks like. But basically at the end of, the February session, our attendees will have gotten all the information they need to publish their own work, right? They know what the process looks like. They know what the steps are. They have resources for being able to link up with professional editors who are seasoned and ethical, which is key, right? And so they have everything they need, and they're like ready to hit the ground running when they get to those different spots. So, and if you still want that information, I want to say $59 is the price for if you're already an Atlanta Writers Club member and you just want the virtual stuff, which is the new author bootcamp stuff, then you can get that. And so you'll get all the recordings of the past ones. And if you sign up, before the February session, then you'll be able to attend that one live, right? So even if you missed all of the other ones live, you'll still get all the information because you can download all the recordings. So don't let that deter you. It's not quote unquote too late. And then of course, we would love to see you physically at the conference, right? If anybody's in the Atlanta area or just needed an excuse to come to Atlanta, feel free. And we will welcome you with open arms, and like I said, just teach you as much as we can about the indie publishing world. Okay, so have a good rest of the week, and I will see y'all in a couple of weeks. Should be fun.